Well, thanks everybody for being on today. My name is Rob Romanowski. I'm the Director of Sales Operations for 3HTI. And joining me today on our panel is our Director of Marketing, Jeff Gavio, and Zach Carson, a solutions consultant with PTC's Virtual Center of Excellence, and also an applications engineer. So really excited to have Zach on with us to help us with these webinars and lead the charge. Today, we're going to be looking at a capability within the base license of Creo called Unite Technology. And this started back with the release of Creo 3. And what Unite Technology does is it allows you to import any or most CAD systems. So you can bring in a CAD file from Unigraphics, from SolidWorks, from Autodesk, and any of those types of CAD files, and even CATIA, and you can open them in Creo. So you don't need to have a third-party translator. But also what's cool is you can save those files. You could also save a Creo file as a CATIA file. There's extensions to do that. There's also ways to do that with the base license, or because the collaboration extension is included for Inventor, and I believe SolidWorks with the base license. So this can save a lot of time if you're working with multiple CAD systems, or if you're working with a client that works with another type of software. If you have Creo, that can really save a lot of time and make your life easier. So I'm going to let Zach start the presentation, and he will give a demo. Zach, about how long are we going to be today?
About 20, 30 minutes.
Perfect. So if you have any questions, type those in the Q&A section. We'll try to answer them as we go. And Zach, you are all set. Take it away, my friend.
All right. Thanks, Rob.
You're welcome.
So like Rob said, we're going to be talking about Creo Unite Technology. It's integrated into Creo. The base package, you're going to get Creo Unite Technology. And really what it's going to do for you is enable you to easily collaborate or consolidate a lot of your different CAD files onto Creo. So it's kind of a single system that you're going to be working from. It allows you to directly open and import your pretty common CAD formats. So Rob named a few of them. There's of course more that he didn't name, but yeah, so let's go ahead and jump right in. So starting with some of the challenges that we see companies commonly running into. It starts with difficulty in collaborating. This is a challenge that everyone faces. If you want to work with somebody that uses a different CAD system, or maybe even you have different CAD files from different systems that you personally work with, it's really difficult to integrate and edit those designs. It's tedious to manage the files, to keep them organized and updated, but you really need to do those things or else you're losing engineering productivity. When you're working with partners, with suppliers, maybe your company hired another company and they used a different CAD system than you did, so you kind of absorb all of their files. You need to be able to consolidate and bring in whatever data they have quickly and accurately so that you're not losing time. So that you don't end up with tons of rework and not end up having to pay for licenses for multiple systems that you don't even really want to use, but you kind of have to just to open and manipulate different CAD files. If and when you finally get these files into your CAD system, you're going to have another mountain of problems trying to work with them and make changes to these different designs. If you're a designer, you know all about this problem. And what happens is designers a lot of times end up just wasting time recreating or rebuilding these models in the system that they want to use them in. You put all this stuff together, and what's it mean? Expensive and delayed projects. You're not getting parts out on time. There's very high IT costs keeping all of the CAD systems up and running, and you put all this together and it's really painful, frankly, and it's a big hurdle that your company has to overcome from a cost perspective. PTC's solution to these challenges is Creo Unite Technology. Like I said, it's inside of Creo, it's integrated into Creo, and it allows you to do this sort of consolidation of other CAD files and collaborate with existing designs that you already have. So there's two ways that this really happens inside of Creo. First, you have the ability to import it. So we've improved this a ton over time, and it's now pretty much at the point where it's a one click and just bring it in, whether it's native CAD geometry or some neutral file like a IGES or a step. Basically, you just bring it in and the file import converts non-PTC data to Creo objects. However, we can also just open the files. Leave them in your native format, but we show it inside of our assembly. We show it in the bill of materials or your model tree, and you don't even try to convert it. You just leave it as is, and then maybe down the line, you need to change something, then you can convert even just parts of the model, or use another tool that we have, and we'll talk about this more today, called flexible modeling. Fantastic tool that actually does allow you to make changes to foreign geometry. So that tool kind of provides you with like a some easy to use geometry editing tools that just allow you to quickly make changes to any design, even non-native Creo files, without losing design intent. We also have a save as capability. So if you're collaborating with a lot of different people, companies, vendors, suppliers, whoever, that needs your data in some other format, you can just do a simple save as. Let's say someone's using SolidWorks. I could save my Creo part as a SolidWorks file so it's nice and easy for them to open, or whatever system they're using. The other phenomenal capability that we have with Creo Unite is the ability to detect when this non-PTC data is out of date. So say someone sends you a new design of a part they're providing you. We can actually detect that and tell Creo to update our models based on those designs. Very quick, very easy to set up. We'll go through this during the demonstration. You'll be able to see how much time this saves us, and also it makes sure that we're always on top of changes, that we know when something changes and that we can update our model accordingly. So everything is up to date all of the time. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the demonstration. I do see we have a couple questions, so I'll just go ahead and go through those before we jump in. It's the case for drawings. Yep, so drawings, you can do the same sort of thing. We can open them in Creo as well. You can also save them as, say, a SolidWorks drawing or SolidWorks format. Same sort of concept. The flexible modeling is not going to be something you're going to be able to do, or to use. That's really just a parametric tool, but you can open and view them in Creo as well.
So the other question was trying to see what an imported part from SolidWorks or CATIA looks like. But our example today is going to be with a unit graphics file, which does run on the Parasolids kernel, and that's pretty much the same kernel. That's the same kernel that SolidWorks runs on. But we can always set up a custom demo to show something more specific if needed.
All right. We'll go ahead and jump right in then. So we're going to go into Creo. Rob kind of already outlined what we're going to go over, so we'll just go ahead and get to work. So this assembly that we have here, this is a battery holder from inside of our Polaris snowmobile. So just to give you some background, we're going to say here, we already have a battery that we're getting from a supplier. They've sent us over a model, and now we just need to assemble that battery holder into our fixture and make sure everything lines up. In this case, it happens to be an NX design, and that includes the battery, the holder, and its tie downs. So the idea with Creo Unite is just to leave it in this format. We don't want to have to rebuild or remodel this because it's not a part that we're building. It's a part that we're buying from a supplier. So what we want to do instead is kind of just work around it. So for example, here, what I need to do is bring in a cover that goes on the top of this battery and protects the terminals. I'm just going to assemble this piece in, just like I did with that NX part. You can see in the model tree, it's still an NX part. We're kind of just working around it. We're basing our geometry in Creo off of that NX model. What you'll notice, however, though, is whenever I go and line up my cover that I created in Creo, it's not really going to line up. There's some things that we need to change, and that's okay, because we're going to base our geometry off of the geometry of that NX design. And we're not really going to change anything with the NX model because, again, it's not something we're making, it's something we're buying. So line these up, and right away you can see a few things going on. At the top there, there's an indentation that we're not accommodating for. And on the back side of this, there's a big strap that's just going directly through our bracket. So obviously these are two things. If we want to use this battery, we're going to need to make some changes. All right, so what I can do here is I'm going to go ahead and just grab some of the geometry on the battery itself, and we're going to base our geometry in Creo off of that. So even though this is an NX model, this could be SolidWorks, CAD, whatever. And all I'm going to do is just select the surfaces on this NX model and copy them. And this is all being done on the model that the supplier sent us. And the purpose of this, the purpose of Unite, is we're working with these outside models, but we're only really working with the features of them that we need to. I don't want to really worry about anything else. And once we have all of those services selected, then we can really choose to have this automatically update, or in this case, choose to do it manually just so we can actually walk through the process for you. All right, so let's go ahead and start to modify our cover here and make sure that it fits this battery that the supplier sent us. So first thing that we need to do is go ahead and make a cutout to clear that boss that's on the top middle of the battery. Pretty simple here. And we're going to use that copy geometry, which is the cutout that I grabbed the surfaces from that NX battery. All right. So you can see this is the same copy geometry from the battery. And what we're really doing here is with this technique, you can create features in one model that are actually referencing the geometry of another model that might not even be in this session. So what we've basically done now is the geometry that I have for a cutout, and it's basically going to locate where this cutout's going to be. So if it changes moving forward, it's not something we're going to have to go in and manually change. We are just going to have it automatically update if the supplier were to modify the actual battery that we're buying from them. We're of course going to be notified of that change, but the geometry itself is going to regenerate automatically. And that's exactly what we want, because I don't want to constantly be going in and having to manually make all kinds of modifications as the supplier I'm getting from this battery from is constantly making their own changes to the design. Right. Next here, just quickly made a cutout at the bottom to clear the battery strap. And that looks pretty good. All right, so now we got our cover pretty much all fixed up here. And we're going to go ahead for the last part of this and do a drop down, because the height of this boss on the battery is lower than the rest of the surface. So once again, I'm just going to use that pink copy geometry. I'm going to make a quick center line through that. Just throw a rough rectangle on here, and then we'll put in dimensions. And this is just going to be the area that I'm dropping down. Looks pretty good. And Just to clean it up a bit, I'll taper the edges of this, drop it down a little more. Round the edges. That looks a little better already. All right, it looks pretty good. So now really what we have is, or what we've done is using the reference geometry of the boss in the middle, then our bracket will be lowered and relocated based on where the boss is on the battery of the NX design. So the idea here is we're basing our design off of the battery design that we're buying. And this is huge because it's very, very rare that someone's doing everything in-house. They need to be able to work with, you need to be able to work with designs for parts that you're buying from different vendors and suppliers that directly impact the parts that you're designing yourself. Now that what we're going to do is, first, let me just go ahead and hide that copy geometry in the top. We used it for the cover, but we don't really need it anymore. So we'll go back to the assembly and take a look here. Everything looks pretty good. So in this case, we have the cutout or the cutout, the protective layer on the top looks good. We have the cutout for the strap, the cutout for the boss at the top. And now we're going to move over to the side here and look at this bracket. So
Hey, Zach,
this, yep.
there's a question specific to what you're showing right now.
Okay.
The question is, will this part always be dependent on the battery? Will the battery be pulled into workspace when the part is checked out?
It is going to always depend on the battery because of how we set it up. You can set it up or not set it up that way. What we did was I used that copy geometry feature to create a link between our Creo geometry and then that NX model. So anytime that NX model is going to change, then we will be notified and we can update our geometry automatically based on whatever change happens. You don't have to set it up that way. It's completely up to you how much or how little you use that feature. I'm using it a lot today because I want this model to basically entirely update automatically when a change is made to the battery.
If it changes, wouldn't the question is, if it changes, wouldn't they send a new model?
Yeah, and the thing is, that's okay because the model is really going to be, or could potentially be of the same name, the same part number. So as long as you're referencing it, we are literally referencing this model of this name. So it's looking at the geometry and it sees, as long as it's the same model, originally the same original file that maybe they've made a modification to and they've sent you the modified model, but it's the same part number, then it is going to still reference that. You can break the link, yeah, if they're saving tons of different copies and they're sending you tons of different copies each time. But as long as they're using the same model, or maybe even potentially, I guess, they could send you a model, you can make the change on the model you're referencing very briefly there, then everything would update accordingly.
So another question came in regarding copy geometry. Do you need the advanced assembly extension in order to be able to copy geometry?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got the model tree in there. I was going to say, let's answer two more questions before you go on, since we've stopped. One question was, how did the NX part get the PRT extension?
Whenever we opened it in Creo, let me see. Oh yeah, in the model tree. I'm not
If you-
sure actually. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. We can, after we're done here, Rob, I can look
Yeah, we'll
into
take a
that a
look
little
at
bit
that.
more. I can
Okay.
get an answer and then shoot you over an email, and you can share it with everyone that's on the call.
And one more outstanding question is, does Creo import include semantic PMI? For example, like a GD&T?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one. I've seen people do it. I know that it can get a little bit finicky. That's another one that I'll have to check on, if there's like any nuances or anything. And then we'll get that answer over to you as well.
Okay, cool. All right, moving onward and upward.
Yeah. So, all right. So now we're going to focus, like I said, on that, on the bracket over here. So what you can already notice is there's a couple holes where we need to bolt this bracket down, and our current design doesn't have any holes at all. So we're going to follow really the same sort of process. We're going to grab the geometry that we need to change, leave everything else alone, and just work with this. So once again, we'll copy the geometry of these holes, choose to manually update this just for the sake of the demo. Ideally, I would automatically update this. We'll also get a notification. And now we'll just use those to locate the cutout from this bracket that we designed, the actual holder that it's being mounted to. And this is just some pretty basic sketch work here. I'm going to project these cutouts, and then we'll throw a dimension here, because what I actually want to do is I want to locate the bottom edge of this bracket based off of where the holes are. And because that's going to determine how wide this piece is, by where those holes are located on the bracket. So we'll just set it to 12.5. That looks good. All right, so let's turn everything back on, and we're ready to bolt this piece together. Now, when it comes to bolting this piece together, working with fasteners, I've done it before in some other systems. Working with fasteners can be an absolute nightmare. I'm going to do it manually here, just assemble a couple fasteners in. But if we had a bunch of fasteners to put in, that process sucks. It could take forever. It's really tedious. We do have an extension, which I'm not showing, called the Intelligent Fastener extension. And what it really does is couple clicks, you select the fasteners you want. It gives you, say you select a bolt, it will recommend to you the correct sized washer, lock washer, nut that are going to fit that bolt. It gives you a preview as you're laying it out so you can verify that what you're selecting is correct. And then what it also does is it will examine your model and say, there are 10 other instances where you could put this exact fastener. Do you want to put it on all of those instances or just this one? And let's say I had 10 holes here, it would go through and I would only have to lay out one fastener, and it would put the fastener on the other 9. I could even pick and choose which holes I want to put the fastener. Maybe it's not all 10, maybe it's 8 out of 10. And I want to do the other 2 separately. You can lay that out, but a really great tool that's going to save you a lot of time. All right, so those are our basic changes. And this is great. Everything lines up perfectly, but we all know it's not always that simple. What happens tomorrow or next week when the supplier says, hey, we don't make that battery anymore, or we've modified it since we last sent it to you? Well, we're going to go ahead and simulate that sort of situation. So I'm going to grab, in this case, a new NX model, same part name and everything, but different versions. And I might not even know how different, but we're going to find out here. And the question is, what does this mean for all of my design that I based off of the geometry of that original battery? And what you're going to see here is whenever we open it up, how this copy geometry is making our life so much easier. We're going to actually be able to really just have the model automatically update for us, and we don't have to actually go in and really manually make any of these changes. So as soon as I open this up, what you'll see is right away I have a notification in the bottom, and it's telling me Well, remember those two copy geometries that we set up? Okay, well, those are now out of date. The ones that you set up before, that with that previous model, it doesn't match the new part that we've been sent. So what we're going to do is, now that we know that, which is exactly what we need to know, I can go ahead and make those changes. Again, remember, we're doing it manually. It could be done automatically. So if you look in the model tree, we can go to each one. We'll start with this one on the side here. This one's nice and easy to see. And whenever I click on it, I can show the differences, and it's very obvious here what's changed. The battery is literally sitting on top of the bracket. Everything needs to update, right? I can even isolate it, and you can see here how much the location of those holes have changed. And all that I have to do is click update, and because I have laid out that copy geometry to base our bracket and the holes off of the battery, everything is going to update accordingly, and our battery and our bracket will fit seamlessly together now. Right, so I didn't have to go through any extra work. I set it up originally to base my geometry off that. I click update, and it sets it all up, or it fixes it all up nice and neat for us without doing any extra work. Same sort of idea here on the top of this model. If I look at the bracket, all right, the battery is way bigger now. The bracket is going right down the middle of the battery. The cutout in the center is not in the right location. The hole's way too small. So we need to update our model, and it's going to make all of the changes for us automatically. So the idea is you go through and you set up that copy geometry one time when you're originally given the part, and now everything the supplier makes after that is no big deal. It's already done for you because it's so easy to just quickly and easily account for those changes. All right, so the key here again is we're able to do this with all the original file formats. You don't need to export neutral files. You don't have to manage secondary files. Everything really is done with that native file, and that's the power of Unite. You leave it in everything in whatever format that you want to. We'll update it as needed. Then you can really go about doing multi-CAD design. So just to finish this up, and then we'll get into the last questions here. I have a few more points I'd like to share that just summarize the value that this can really bring to your company. Okay, so we're all about, Creo Unite is all about enhancing your collaboration. It's the ability to open and import common data formats, which means you don't need to maintain third-party tools and licenses to translate the data, and engineers don't have to waste hours or days working on that. We can do a simple save as to export your data. We can integrate non-PTC CAD data and then actually work with it and make edits to it, which we didn't show today, but it can be done using the flexible modeling extension that Creo offers. And this also allows you to consolidate, bring all of the multi-CAD data you have and just use Creo rather than needing to maintain licenses to all of the other third-party CAD tools and learn actually how to use all of those different systems. Lastly, when you bring the data into Creo, you want to be able to actually work with it, to edit it. I know what it's like to bring in the CAD and basically have that dumb geometry you can't really do anything with. It's a pile of mush. It's impossible to work with, and then you actually just have to rebuild the model anyway. So we're actually giving you a way to bring it into Creo, make some direct edits to it, even if it's non-Creo designs, and actually have a multi-CAD collaborative environment and eliminate the need to rely on so many third-party systems. So that's all that I had planned to go through for this demonstration of Creo Unite technology.
All right, Zach, there's a few questions. Actually, there's a lot of questions that came in. To address two of them, the Intelligent Fastener extension and Flexible Modeling extension are included in the base license of Creo. Now, I believe for the Intelligent Fastener extension, that started with Creo 6. With the, and correct, I'll let you answer, tell me if I'm wrong or right, Zach. Flexible modeling, I believe, started with the base license of Creo. Was it in Creo 4?
I
That
think
it was
so,
included?
yes. I think, yeah.
So it's gonna be dependent on what version of Creo that you're using. And if you're unsure, you can send me an email. You can respond to the email for the invitation that was sent out and say, hey, I want to know what version of Creo I'm on. I need some help here. And we'd be more than happy to find that out for you. But right now with Creo 9, 7, 987, and I believe also 6, that intelligent fastener extension is included. So another question, going back to, do you need a PDM system like PDM system in order to link the supplier part that you were demonstrating?
No.
Okay, so
but you need to store on your wherever you're storing your files, you'll need to store both. It doesn't have to necessarily be PDM.
It just needs to be stored on your workstation or on your server.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Next question says, is it automatic if the supplier's features use the same feature ID numbers? Would it work easy if they completely rebuilt the battery and saved it as the same file name?
Yes, I believe that would work fine.
Cool. And lastly, does the copy geometry in the model depend on the surface ID numbers on the surface or vendor model?
Yeah, so this is kind of similar to that last question. I believe that would work just fine. So if the vendor simply changes the size of the battery, it'll work fine. But if they replace the mating features with the new geometry, you'll have surface IDs on the supplier part. I don't think you'll get failures on the copy geometry features. You might. That's another one, and I can dig a little bit more into that, see what I can find and get it over after.
All right, sounds good. So we'll get a little more detail on that one, as well as the how the Unigraphics part that was brought in got the .prt extension. All right, good questions.
Yeah, very good questions.
Great audience. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for being on today. We're not going to have a webinar next week. We're gonna have a ton of meetings next week, but the following week, keep an eye out for our next webinar in the webinar series. We'll be running these every Thursday at noon, and more than happy to have you guys join us and be able to help educate you and help you with your use of Creo. One more question just popped in. Are there Creo features underneath that part, or is it just an import feature?
So that's a good question. Whenever you import a part, every system treats geometry differently. I mean, if you've done it before, you know how it is. If I bring a Creo part into SolidWorks, it's featureless. There's no history. That's where flexible modeling really comes into play and is such a fantastic tool, because when you first bring it in, no, there's not going to be a history. But what flexible modeling allows you to do is make changes by basically selecting on what you know are features on the model. So select on a couple holes and then tell Creo, these are holes, and now they basically become just a normal Creo feature that you can edit with. You're not going to be able to, it's not going to affect design intent at all, but you'll be able to say, change the size of the holes, or change the pattern of the holes, or even shift the location of the holes if you want to, or delete the holes. So you're essentially creating the features on that blob that you originally brought in.
Good stuff, Zach.
Yep.
I guess we got another Q&A session. A webinar, can we do a webinar on importing parts with surfaces with gaps in the quilt and how to repair them? I think what we can do for you is I'll take that offline with you and see what we can do to assist you in completing that specific task. You know, kind of help you along. You know, we want to help you guys become more proficient at Creo, especially solving problems like that. So I will get back to the person on that last question. So thanks again, everyone. Once again, if you have any questions or need any more detail, just respond to the email that was sent out for the invitation. That comes to me, and we're more than happy to help you out. Thanks again, everybody. And Zach, thank you very much for leading the charge today. Take care, everyone.